So, it is time to face the most difficult aspect of the game. Forget combat, forget builds. It's time to roleplay. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether it's voicing a character or being really scared of roleplay, I'm here to help you with everything. I've covered quite a few aspects of playing this game as a beginner in previous videos, but today we go for the part that has no real rulebook to follow, and many people are unsure about how to approach it. Others might fear ridiculing themselves because they're going in too deep. Today I hope to vanquish your role-playing fears and put you on the path for matching that sweet character build to an equally interesting character concept. I can see you think, oh boy, this is going to be a 20-minute skit about doing funny voices. Bull crap. Roleplay is so much more than forcing your vocal cords to be funny. It is everything you build about your character that isn't mechanical. Backstory, attitude to the world, the way he or she embodies their class, and yes, also potential voice work, but we'll get to that in the end. But where do we begin? I've said it before, but your concept usually begins even before you've even written down that very first modifier on your nice crispy clean character sheet. Before the math starts, you make a concept of what you want your character to do in game, and that extends to what you want them to be like. Are you going for the valiant fighter or the cunning rogue? Maybe swap it up and make a cunning fighter and a valiant rogue. With that silly turnaround, I make my first point for today. Your class choice does not decide what your character acts like. Not all fighters have to be dumb. Not every rogue has to pick everyone's pockets. Not every paladin has to be holier than thou, and not every warlock has to be the angry, gloomy guy. Make your character as you see fit and use the class to reinforce your concept. Of course, if you want to play the standard stereotypical angry, short-tempered fighter, go right ahead. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just want to make you clear to you that your class choice does not define your personality. When deciding on your basic character concept, there are a few things to take into account. The most important one is to decide how your character is going to react to the world around them. Are they scared of everything? Cocky? Heroic? Caring? Who knows? To get you going, it helps to describe your character's attitude with 3 keywords. They don't all have to be positive, but don't turn your character into an a-hole that nobody wants to work together with. For example, here you have Kel the Grim, the dwarf. He's smart, he's welcoming, but he's very sensitive about his family's honor. From these 3 simple descriptions, I can already guess how he's going to react to a multitude of situations. It helps to govern my general attitude to the people around me. Open to most, but a slight insult to the mighty house Stormsinger will result in a very angry dwarf indeed. And with this simple step, you have already taken a huge leap into the role-playing aspect of the game. For most of the time, the general character of your hero will define how you play him or her in any given situation. Of course, those traits are not set in stone. Having a character act against their general nature can cause some really beautiful role-playing moments. The paladin of the party, who's always this shining example of courage, suddenly showing fear about facing a certain type of opponent, will make his victory all the sweeter and actually opens up a chance to develop his character. The grim and asocial warlock actually cracking a smile and having some fun at any given moment can be a really fun memory for your character and for yourself as a player. Not being set in stone means your characters can change and evolve. Certain events in a campaign can have a profound effect on your character. Something unbelievable may alter their views on the world as a whole. The death of a beloved party member, or gaining a new friend. If you feel there is a change about and you feel like it's the right thing for your character to do, roll with it. Don't be too fixated on the fact that you started out as the Grim Warlock. If your warlock starts warming up to people, let him do it. Go with the flow. It will feel like a natural course of things, and it makes your character all the more complex and it adds more depth to it. Talking about not overly fixating on things, let's talk backstory. Backstory is important. It tells people where you come from. It might explain a few things about how you react to things, and it can give the DM something fun to play with during the campaign, focusing perhaps one or two encounters around it. Don't expect the DM to fully incorporate your backstory into his campaign though. You're not the only main character out there. There's about 3 to 5 of you, each with their own unique backstory, and the Dungeon Master has a separate story to run, so they don't always really mix well. When creating your backstory, it's quite alright to ask the Dungeon Master for some info about the world you'll be playing in. Keldegrim the Artificer is a dwarf, but I needed to know about the dwarf holds in my DM's campaign to be able to root him into that world. And for sure you can ask the Dungeon Master to implement 1 or 2 things for your character to work out. Keldegrim, for example, comes from a very old and noble family of lightning-happy dwarves, so obviously, it's pretty great for my character if he actually enjoys some standing in his hold based solely on his family name. I don't expect him to be treated like the king's brother, but he's certainly above the common folk. And I took the effort of designing his house emblem so it adds a little flavor to my character and it makes the family honor aspect more tangible without mentioning it all the time. Keldegrim will always be sporting the emblem on his own gear somewhere, and when he enhances someone else's gear with his artificer infusions rather, you can be damn sure there will be a Stormsinger family emblem involved. Those are all, in my opinion, positive ways of implementing your backstory. You use it to enhance your experience, to root your character into the world that you'll be playing in, and you might even enhance somebody else's experience as well, without actually interfering too much with anything that the Dungeon Master has planned out, or without taking control of his lore too much. For beginners, I advise you to keep your backstory limited to what the world needs to know about your character. Stuff like upbringing, family relations, and possibly one major event that defined your life are all good. There's no need for a 5-page backstory that details everything from childhood to where you are now. Don't get me wrong, if you want to write that all out, because, for example, you really like writing well-developed backstories, go right ahead. Really, it's a hobby. Do what makes you happy. Just don't expect other people to read it, and don't expect every aspect of it to see relevance during play in the sessions. On the same note, don't cling to it too much if it's going to completely obstruct the course of the campaign. If Bror, son of Bren, is horribly afraid of spiders according to some tragic event in his past, and the next part of the adventure is going to take place in a spider-filled cavern, and it is really clear that you have to go there in order for the story to advance, don't try to avoid it. Don't be like, oh no, but my fighter is so afraid of spiders, we can't go there. Play out the fear, possibly overcome it during a series of spider-related encounters. Turn your backstory into Frontstory. Frontstory means, ladies and gentlemen, now that I've dropped the term, that you're being guided by what is happening during your campaigns. You start from your backstory and you use it to evolve your character with the front story. Turn that fear of spiders into an accomplishment. Maybe someday Bror will be known as the slayer of giant spiders because he overcame his fear and cleared out entire caves of the stuff afterwards. Right, now that we've covered backstory, let's talk about your class. In short, it can be really fun and really immersive to know how your character is doing things. I touched upon the example of my artificer incorporating his family emblem in his infusions. I also have an idea of what his most frequently cast spells look like when he's casting them. These are good roleplay to describe on occasion, throwing a bit of immersion into the fights, and they make your character stick out instead of just being another rogue or another artificer. And our goal is, after all, to make your characters more unique. Don't do it all the time though, you might slow down the game too much. It's not just a spellcaster thing though, describing how your martial character fights actually can be equally immersive. Is your fighter dealing out precise blows or is he smashing stuff full strength? Are they very focused or making silly banter while fighting the orcs? If you use a very iconic class feature or just something that your character uses a lot, try to have an idea what it looks like. I'm not going to go into this in very great detail. If you want more explanation about this, have a look at my Bard roleplay video and my fighter roleplay videos. They touch upon the subject for both casters and martial fighters. All right, now let's get into the part that scares quite a few people. The practical part of bringing your concept to the table and making the character come alive during the sessions. Let me comfort you immediately. You can do everything roleplay related in Dungeons and Dragons without having to resort to voice work and weird faces. Not everyone feels comfortable doing these, and they are by no means required. You can describe what your character is doing or how he or she reacts in great detail. Instead of having to act out the gruff voice, you can mention that your character has this very hoarse voice. Occasionally remind people that Bror, son of Bren, sounds like a bag of asphalt being thrown around, with a sentence like, in his typical hoarse voice, Bror suggests his friends to charge the bandits head on. And save your own vocal cords the hassle. Weave in some details into your description. Use the occasional analogy. In no way does this make you any less of a great player if this is your preferred method. I've seen a lot of really fun and great players who prefer using the descriptive method over the actual voice acting. What you say or do matters a lot more than how you say it. If you want to go all the way though and incorporate your voice and such into your character concept, go for it. If you don't know where to start, I'll give you some tips to guide you. Tip 0. Before we even start, I just want to say this. Don't be afraid and just do it if you want to do it. If you feel at ease with your D&D group, you should be able to practice your character voice without feeling any shame whatsoever. Tip 1 then. Look for a voice that you can maintain. As funny as Jimbo the high-pitched gnome barbarian might sound, your vocal cords are going to hate you if you have to spend 4 hours talking like this. Experiment a bit in your free time. Look for something that you think that fits the idea you have of your character and that you can easily keep up. In the same note, accents can be really fun, but they add extra challenge to the voice work, and you should pick an accent that you can keep up or one that you're willing to practice on. Don't worry if it's not always super consistent. People will remember the general idea. They won't nitpick on the details. We're all here to have fun. You will learn as you go. Tip number 2. Adjust your vocabulary a bit. It might depend on the social standing of your character or where they are from. Keldegrim, the noble dwarf, will use different words than Ulfric, the farmer. It can be really fun to have some character-specific vocabulary and even insults at the ready for during sessions. Tip number 3. It's a crazy idea, but all you non-native English speakers out there, you can roleplay in your own language. Gasp! Shocked, amazed, and a little bit surprised there. Most of the source material is in English, and I frequently see questions about whether or not people roleplay in English or in their own language. A lot of people feel more comfortable in their own language, and there is no reason why you should not be able to play in it. I've played in groups that play in English, I've played in groups that play in Dutch, which is my native language, and I've had groups where everyone just kind of chose the language of these two that works best for them. For example, the Dungeon Master did all of his impeccable voice work in English, but I did my part in Dutch because it worked better for me and for the character. It also kind of makes sense that you're more familiar with accents and vocabulary in your own language. Tip 4. maybe a bit more for the dungeon masters among us, but some small alterations to posture can really nail a character. Hunch your shoulders for some creepy old dude. Straighten your back to portrait a proud warrior chief. Frowning character when your players are doing weird stuff in front of them. Smile when the character is of a welcoming kind. Make eye contact with your players when talking to them. Anything can work here. You can try to give a certain recurring character like one distinctive physical feature to make them more recognizable. And tip number 5, very, very, very important. Enjoy yourself. You're doing this to create a better experience for you and your friends at the table, but the moment that you stop enjoying yourself because you're forcing yourself too much or you don't feel comfortable, don't feel weird about dropping the act and just returning to maybe a more descriptive method. This is a game, it's supposed to be fun, but as long as you feel like you're doing something that makes you feel better or you're learning from doing it, keep doing it. Go for it, I believe in you. And that's it for today. I hope that today I cleared some of the clouds surrounding the RP part of the game, that I showed you that it is so much more than silly faces and funny voices. Do not hesitate, ladies and gentlemen, to share your role-playing concept in the comments down below. Tell us how you made your character very memorable throughout the campaign. If I can add one more from myself, I once played Fordin the Bard, Fordin Loudwater even, and he always rhymed. When talking, when singing, everything he did rhymed, to the greater joy and irritation of the table at the same time. So what did you do? Talk about it in the comments. If you're still liking what I do, but you haven't subscribed yet, do it, please. It's not like my livelihood depends on your subscription, but I do like seeing the numbers tick. So click the button, subscribe, click the bell, do whatever you want to do to help me out, and then we'll see each other in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon.